Welcome to a special lecture. And when I was a kid, the doctor and my mom told me I was special, but that's because I fell on my head, right? Yeah, he remembers that. So today's lecture is on Bobby Fischer. He may be crazy like a fox, but he's also crazy like Fox News, unfortunately. And he passed away approximately 10 years ago, about a week ago. Maybe it was 2 weeks ago. And you know where he's buried. So today we're going to talk about opening principles and bad answers students give, and the fact that nobody can learn because we live in the South. Now, here's why I hate all kids and all of you at home, and even most of the adults, is when bad things happen where you lose your queen and you get checkmated and you lose all your pieces and you always lose all of your games, you're like, oh well, then you just do the same thing again. Then you have a parent or a friend or a chess coach or even an enemy, and they're like, yeah, that thing that you did, don't do that. And then you're like, uh-huh, and then you do it again. Okay? That's the way most chess people are. And I'm going to give dozens of examples today. It didn't matter. I could have taught them the secret to nuclear power. They're going to play pawn. They don't care. They don't care what I teach them. They do whatever they do. Now, for most of you, including Raj, your parents are paying for this class. So if they're paying money so I teach you to play better and you totally ignore everything I say, what's the point of the class? So if you're like, man, Grandmaster Finegold showed me this awesome way to play with black, I guess I'm going to do that, even though I told you not to do that with black. You're like, oh yeah, but it looks good. Didn't the Grandmaster say don't do that? Yeah, but I want to do that. Now, even though what I'm saying sounds funny, it's basically every student I've ever taught or seen. If you make good moves, then you're probably give all their pieces away. Now, let's see who's paying attention. The answer is nobody. The move B4 in this position or this position reminds you of what famous game? Only Karen, Archer, and Raj can answer, and possibly Christopher. Possibly. Remember, you don't know any famous games, so name the famous games you do know, and you're probably right. That's how math works. So this pawn's worth like 2 rooks, this rook's worth 3 rooks, and this is worth 4 rooks. Yeah. These are the worst pawns ever. They got nothing going on for them. Still, and now we have a lot of good moves. We could take this. We could take en passant with check. We could play queen g3. And probably they all win. And the reason is, this is all terrible, and this is the terriblest. Your king's walking up the board. Boo! Passed pawn. Black doesn't have a passed pawn. Okay? And this endgame actually features something very interesting, which is actually, I don't have it here, is why Wesley So drew against Magnus Carlsen in the London Chess Classic, also rook and bishop ending. And Ivanchuk did the same thing, but it didn't work. But he tried. And trying
is the first step to failure.
Correct. Good kids. Good job. Okay. So, yeah. So actually, Black has a tough time here. And when you're a low-rated player like you guys, you're just like, rawr, and you play c5 and d6 and hang all your pawns and resign. When you're old, like Mamajarov, who's not old, he's old compared to you two. Now, for those of you who are in history majors, they gave the Greeks the Trojan horse, the gift, and then they came out and they showed them, right? Are apocryphal stories good? No? Okay. It's all lies, but they're entertaining lies. And in the end, isn't that the real truth? The answer is no. Explain that to me. You know what the Greek gift is? You do? What? You know something? Are you feeling okay? Somebody check his temperature. All right, what's the Greek gift? Explain to the class, and I'll shake my head while you're explaining.
It's like bishop takes on the king side, and then you like move your queen in check, and king moves back, and then you move your knight up.
Yeah, now you know why he's not teaching the class. Although everything he said was correct. He just, he doesn't have a chessboard, so he's got nothing. Very good. Now, whenever I teach anything, I have to give a public service announcement. Just because you know it doesn't mean it works, right? If you're like, well, my dad went to the bank and he took out $50, I guess if I go to the bank, I'll get $50. Now they just call the police if you go to the bank, right? So you don't have an account here, you're too young, what are you doing here? That's not your account. Okay, and chess is like that too. When I teach you something, you're like, oh boy, I'm gonna do that every game. No, and actually I have a good example where it doesn't work. We're like, oh boy, the Greek gift, then they resigned. So, okay, so if you want to play knight g5 and then bishop takes check, well, you can't make 2 moves in a row unless you're a grandmaster, then you can, right? Well, you don't know that, you're not a grandmaster. Okay, if I win every game, me, and all my moves are the worst, I'm the highest rated player in the world. I read chess books like those, but not those, and I noticed something was very common in the chess book. White resigns, black resigns. That's very common. And I was a little kid, I was rated 1100, and I was like, oh boy, I'm gonna resign. I'll be a good player. Okay, now, let's say you're watching the NBA because you have brain damage or something, right? Destruction. So when you blunder in basketball and baseball and football, it doesn't matter. When you blunder in chess and you're Magnus Carlsen, you're playing a beginner, you could lose. The beginner goes mate, and you're like, oh. So today we're going to talk about opening principles and bad answers students give, and the fact that nobody can learn because we live in the South. All my ex-wives are chess players.